Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to the Perakee Podcast. I hope you're all having a great time, great evening out there in YouTube land. Today, I have a special guest all the way from the land down under, Stephanie Wieland. She is a Reiki practitioner. She is a Perakee. Put your mitts up, throw the lines. She's a double simian Perakee, just like me. A freak, a weirdo, a wizard, a witch.
All of the above.
And she's from another thing that I found interesting that I've talked with her about. She's from Aboriginal descent in Australia, and those people hold the magic. I've read many tales. One of my favorite is one of the favorite things I've read about the Aboriginal people in Australia was that they didn't used to speak with words to each other. They used to speak through the mind with images and stuff like that, you know. And I thought
telepathically, I suppose is what,
with images was how they spoke. And so it was even harder for them to communicate with Europeans that came, because they didn't know how to really use words like they probably did, but they were more advanced than the Europeans that were coming. And then
they didn't need words.
One of the most other crazy experiences I've ever had to do with Aborigine or Aboriginal art. I went to 2019. I went to the Museum of Anthropology at the University of British Columbia, and they had an Australian women's art exhibit, it blew my mind. I guess they had been suppressed until the late 80s. They weren't allowed to make art or show art or keep art or thing, and not until late 80s or early 90s. And then they were finally allowed to make their art and show it to the world. And these were huge canvases, like 12 feet by 12 feet or 14 feet by 4, probably bigger, 16 feet wide even. And there's just a chair placed in front of it about 6 feet, and you're just supposed to sit in there in this room in silence. And I went and sat in there, and I was sober as a judge, and I full on hallucinated. All the painting is one solid color with millions of dots of all different sizes. That's all it is dots and circles, all different sizes. And you just sit there and meditate and watch it for a minute. Man, I saw animals and figures and people, full on hallucinating. There's a lot of energy, there's a lot of magic, there's a lot of love put into that. It blew my mind. But yeah,
that's
I'm stoked on Aboriginal culture.
And
you take it away.
Oh no, please. It's interesting you mentioned that, because I was just speaking to a gentleman in Canada. He didn't say which part of Canada he was. It was just through a chat thing. I'm on many. But he taught me something I didn't know, and it actually relates to this. There's rock. So Australia is what they call a mega biodiversity country. So it makes sense. Obviously, we can't always trust what we're told from maps and stuff, but we were once attached to Africa very, very long time ago. But Australia itself, within its diversity, it is so vast. It's actually more diverse than Africa in the sense of our species and diversities, and endemic, not to be confused with a pandemic. We don't want to, but endemic scientifically means that it's not found anywhere else in the world. That also comes down to the minerals in our dirt. And they have there's this type of rock. I can't remember what type of rock it was because it's so technical, but it's only found one other place in the world, and that's in this one place in Canada. And it's this special type of mineral in the earth. So the only reason that could happen scientifically, what we know of modern day science, would be that either we were attached physically, which is, if you look at the earth, that's very unlikely. But we must be attached energetically or geometrically. per se. Geometric is just another version of a type of energy, right? So that means Canada and Australia at one stage, the only thing that makes sense science-wise of what we know would be that we were energetically connected at one point through the earth. And that's why you know, Aboriginals deeply believe in the elements. There being 5, not 4. You know, we've got fire, wind, earth, and water, but then we have ether. Ether to them, it would be the spirit, the source, the everything, the soul, I suppose. It being an extra element to them, and it's in everything. It being the center element. So Aboriginal art, when itself, these dots, they're actually very strategically placed when they're done them. It's not made like traditional art where you would follow a specific line and it makes sense. They use the stars a lot. A lot of their stories, they call it the dream time, because it does take you to a dreamlike state. And they will tell you these stories. A lot of them are done through animals. The serpent being the most prominent, our rainbow serpent. And he is the creation spirit, and from what I can gather, he would be God, or Jehovah, Yahweh, the variation of that. For anyone who isn't up to date with Hebrew belief or any other type of ancient belief, if you notice, the serpent is always there when they talk about the creation of earth, and it being like him being always rainbow. And I believe they're talking about that. The you know how it's called rainbow warriors, and we've got rainbow depictions and everything, really, and it being different energies creating a bridge to different, I suppose, for you know, different, whether it be dimensions, whether it be astral projection or travel or anything. All of it is through these various energies which are represented in color. And we see that in the Perakee belief too, and Larry speaks of the yellow Perakee and the blue, and all of that. Ultimately, they just come down to labels to help us understand. It's all vibrational energy. And when they say Aboriginals spoke telekinetically, it's not like in the movies, you know, where they hear this voice in their head. I mean, for some it is, but there's actually 5 senses or so. Some people hear, some people can smell it. Smell energy. Some people can feel it, which I feel like simians are our first senses of feel and knowing are very strong in simians. It being our head and our heart, and that combination. It's like we know. Sometimes we read information and we feel like we already know it, and not in an egotistical sense, but it's like a remembering as opposed to a learning. And it being that physical representation of how many lives we've had. And so with the Aboriginal side of me, my dad is actually English, so he's 100% white. So in Australia, we were only colonized 230 years ago, much like the Indians, only much later. We got left untouched for a long time. We were quite lucky being Australia. We're so far away from everyone. You've got to cross the Antarctica to get to us, so good luck with that. Or many other countries, which at the time wasn't possible for a very long time. Travel to us wasn't always easy. That's probably why we don't have much war here. We're quite lucky because we're too hard to get to. We're very, very large island, and Aboriginal culture is dated at this time to about 65,000. They can physically go off cave paintings, which is the oldest living civilization. It outdates Arabic, it outdates Indian. And that's not to say in an egotistical sense, but more of a history sense of how long these people. If we know into genetics and go into that type of science, there's a person called Mitridonical Eve. So she said humans trace back to being originally all dark skinned to start with.
Yeah.
We all would, and then,
Eve. Have you ever read that book, 7 Daughters of Eve? Yeah.
Yeah. And
yeah,
so
everybody back to 7 people. Yeah.
And as they've migrated and moved out to various parts of the world, we've evolved to have various traits and genes. You know, the further away from the hot sun, the less need we need for darker skin. And so this world genetic deformities poo, I suppose. But anyway, I'm getting off topic. Back to the Australian belief. Australians themselves, Aboriginals, sorry. So we were invaded by the English, Captain Cook in, look, I could tell you the date, but I can't recall it right now. Too much information going on in here. But 230 years ago, roundabouts, we were invaded, and about 90% of us were either, it's an awful story, but we were enslaved. The women were separated, the children were taken and were all placed in detention centres. My mum, there's a generation here called the Stolen Generation, and my mother's mum was part of the Stolen Generation. There's a few movies about it, one called Being the Rabbit Proof Fence, where a lot of the children were able to break free, and that's the only reason we still have our bloodlines here today, because those children followed. We have these fences, old school now, they're all demolished, but barbed wire fences that would track a lot of Australia through the desert, and it was the only form of navigation they had apart from the stars. So these kids, I'm talking like 2 years old to 10, were tracked all these, and my mother's mum was one of them, and they're called the Stolen Generation here because they were all stolen from their tribes and clans and separated. I do believe a lot of Aboriginals are double simian, a lot of them, or at least one simian. A lot of elders that I'm able to connect with have at least one person in the tribe will have a simian line.
Yeah, I find a lot of correlations between your people and the Native Americans here in British Columbia, because this was the last place here that they got to. They started on the East Coast in the 1400s or 1500s, you know, through what textbooks say, right? Vikings could have been here. Moors were in America before, I think long before that, many people. But European civilization didn't really start setting up shop in British Columbia and to the early 1800s.
Left quite untouched.
Yeah, very untouched, very wild, very remote land. And what you say about the Stolen Generation, same here. The Native Americans got put into residential schools to teach them
separated,
to get the native out of the child, to teach them to be civilized. Don't speak your tongue. Your beliefs are, demonic from the devil. And
it's still happening here. We have about 500. Yeah, sorry.
The thing I find, and my theory, or I don't know, it's not necessarily mine, just what I've learned, like that's pretty much what the church did all over the world. And the way I see it is that it was, they know how the world works. They know about manifesting reality. They know the power of group intention and people that are connected to higher worlds that use psychedelics and do ceremony and drumming and healing circles and things. That these people are like Neos in the Matrix. These guys, men and women and groups and tribes, I mean, they can really make an effect on their world. So they had to go systematically around the world breaking all this down, because these are very powerful people. They may not have the material things like guns and the technology and this and that, but they're living in a world that they didn't need those sorts of things, where you shared everything, where you didn't have theft and you didn't have criminals and all these situations that supposedly like the more advanced European civilizations would bring, or their arrogance, thinking that they were the right way. And one other thing I wanted to just bring up quickly.
No, yeah.
Because before I forget it, I'm ADD. What you were saying about that there was similar minerals in Australia as to Canada. As a miner, I know about minerals and this and that. And one of the ways they are deposited on the earth is by comets, right? So that's just one thing I would think, is that similar comets could have hit Australia that hit here, and that's why even not connected, they may be the same. But I've also heard really interesting, it's not a theory, it's truth. How would I put it? So people that study soil, South America has structured soil, like structured. They're saying it's so rich in nutrients and everything. It's so good for growing everything. But I mean, I don't have enough. I'm not intelligent enough to describe it as a scientist would. but it is intelligently designed to be able to grow anything. It is the most best nutrient rich, dense soil in the world, and the only places it exists is in parts of South America in the jungle and in British Columbia where I live. So is that like pre-cataclysm? Did things wipe out and only some parts survive, or were they
I'm
just
actually,
populated down there and
yeah.
here? Like, it's always made me wonder, because the rainforest I live in, I mean, you just go for, I've grown up in it, but you go for a walk in it, mining like I do, people come from all over the world and all over the country to work with me, and I take them out into the forest, and they're just blown away by how rich and dense, and if you're sensitive to energy, just the potency of the energy and the magic in the forest is second to none. Like, even when you leave the coastline of British Columbia and go up into the mountains where my mother lives, which is still beautiful, but it's a boreal forest. It's not so dense. It's more pines as opposed to cedars.
Canada's actually a very popular holiday destination for Australians. The amount of personal friends I can tell you that have gone there and been like, you need to go there. Like, the water is so blue, the forest is, it's just so, the air, they are so, you can tell when they come back from Canada, and they're just so like, if you don't go there, you're not living life. Like, and so I'm like, I'll get there. And I honestly, I so do. I really want to. I look at the pictures of the water there. I'm very drawn to water, and I love forests. I'm a Pisces, so everyone's like, "Oh, you're a mermaid," and I'm like, "Look, I love beaches. I get the appeal, but where I feel like I'm at home is, I dream of like dense, rich forests with like the richest soil. That's like." And I am actually quite lucky. My best friend is, she did a double major in biodiversity and geoscience, and she was alongside me she was studying that, and we lived together while I started my spiritual journey. So she was so science-based, and she actually taught me algebra, because I'm very good at English, probably because of my English roots. I'm not sure there, but speaking, writing, and talking, fine with. Math, no. I'm very, very, I can build something like that, but if you give me too many detailed instructions on it, I get confused and frustrated. So and so I was really lucky for her to know me on a personal level and be able to teach me algebra and math and how to apply it, because she was doing like quantum physics at the time, and I was studying astrology. So I'm like, oh my God, please help me. And she helped me understand quantum physics. And I loved crystals at the time purely because they were pretty. This is very early on in my spiritual journey. I was like, oh my God, I love this pretty thing. And she would actually, her little science brain would be like, oh, this is made from this, and would tell me like things like the difference between a tektite, which would be something that came from a comet or out of space into Earth, as opposed to something that's come up out of. And the evolution of that, and understanding how deeply old this planet is, and how much we can really honestly gain. And as a Reiki practitioner, so I've been a Reiki master, for lack of a better term, because I'm definitely not mastered yet. I feel like I've got so much to learn.
For 1 second. We just went at it hard right off the get-go, I think, because we'd always been talking for
true,
minutes before. We didn't give any background situation for who you are.
I should tell you who the hell I am.
It was like two ADD minds colliding with each other, and we were just going. So,
whoa, where do we start? Yeah. We'll just
maybe for
here, and then here, and then here.
So maybe for people that are not ADD, let's give them a little background about yourself and that you're a Reiki practitioner.
Anyone who isn't spoken to me, there's a few people who may watch this who have spoken to me and may know a little bit about my background. But apart from being from Australia and Aboriginal, my father, I grew up in a small country town called Dalby in Queensland. So, you know, when you were saying about how things are named very from that invasion era, And yeah, so we're still in the process here of getting back a lot of our land rights. But I live in the state of Queensland, which is the east coast of Australia, for those wanting to know where. And I'm in central Queensland, so I'm just in between before it gets really rainforesty and dense. And we live here purely for work. My husband also works in the industry. But as a young girl, I noticed, now I'm 32 now, and I look back on my life and I notice these parts that built me who I am. And it beginning at the start of being out in a small country town, my dad being allocated there. He's an elder within a church. For people who don't know, I'm not sure how vastly well known Jehovah's Witnesses are around the world. Yeah. So Jehovah's Witnesses, he's an elder within the religion. He's a fifth generational elder. So he moved to Australia when he was 16 with his dad and his mum, his whole family. He's the oldest of his family, so it was always expected of him to carry on my grandfather, etc. Now I'm the youngest of 4, and I'm very much younger than the rest of my siblings too. My closest sibling is 7 years older than me, and I have 2 brothers and a sister. That being important was that they left home a lot earlier than me, all of us leaving home at quite a young age, because we grew up in a very strict household. At the time, I hated it, but it's helped me now with my learning, because from birth, I know I was a baby, so I wasn't reading, but I was at the table. And then as I learned, we'd read the Bible every day. I can't tell you how many times I've read the Bible front to back. Probably, I don't know. I really couldn't tell you because once we finished the last chapter, we just started the next chapter the next day. Then we would also, my dad being an elder, he would run the church meetings 3 times a week. I was his little protege. So I was taught from a young age how to, what they call, speak the truth to people. It being that Armageddon was coming, we all need to. And so, but having said all of that, what I learned most of all was community and the power of people coming together, I suppose, in hindsight. And I also learned how to read Hebrew, which has come in handy, coming through translating. Yeah, so I grew up, I knew Hebrew since I couldn't tell, I just knew it. I grew up reading things like Melchizedek, being able to pronounce all the hard things in the Bible and make sense of it. Hebrew to me, it was almost like a second language. When you
could read Hebrew, eh?
And understand what it's actually trying to say. And then the upside of it. Yeah. And without realizing it, so magic was very taboo in my home. I was told from a young age, I would ask my dad questions and he'd tell me that's demons. And so I was there was a lot of fear involved. Unintentionally, my dad is a very loving human, but he never did it consciously, but he was also taught by fear as well. So there was a lot of, you can't do that because that's demonic, or if I told him. Now, within the Jehovah's Witness religion too, I was always taught about the 144,000. Now, we know how important that number is, yes. Yeah. And so that number's always been known to me. Within the religion, they call them the anointed. And every, what you would call Easter, they call the Passover. So they remember Jesus's passing around wine and unleavened bread, but you're not allowed to partake. Unlike other religions, we don't eat or drink his flesh or blood. You can only do that if you're one of the 144,000.
Okay. Where does Kabbalah fall under Jehovah's Witness? Like
any other religion?
Is that demonic work?
Yep. Anything else that isn't Jehovah's Witness, they consider demonic. They consider themselves Christians, but they don't link themselves to any other religion in Christianity. So within the religion, why it was so strict and restricting, not only did I live in a really small town, but we weren't allowed to associate with anyone outside of the religion. They call anyone outside worldly, and association with them is dangerous. So apart from needed societal means like going shopping, going to school, going to work. There was no outside interaction or friendships or connections made outside. It was full dedication. Outside education was not encouraged. Wealthy pursuits were not encouraged. My dad was very wealthy. He actually, ironically, worked for the government and has done for 40 years in IT. Because my dad's very, very, very what they call ADHD or autistic. So he is highly, highly analytical mind. My dad was a very emotionless person. It was always you could do better, no matter how high I achieved. And as a Simian, you can understand how frustrating that could be for me growing up. I always felt like there was a level I couldn't reach, not only from my father, but he was also the leader of the church and the elder. So he was never my dad. He was always my elder.
Wow, yeah.
My leader. It was a really hard place to be in at home and as a young kid. And I said, how do you know you're anointed? I remember asking him, not that I believe I'm anointed. I understand the concept of the 100, but how do you know? And he just kept saying, you just do. And I kept thinking about it and thinking about it. Now, I left home in the religion at 15. I got kicked out, disfellowshipped, as they call it, and they now relate to me as an apostate for what I believe in. But not that I go preaching to them about it, but my family aren't allowed to associate with me from 15 onwards, and I haven't had contact with them since. So I know the feeling of being alone, Brad, and many of us are, that path of having to know in your heart and follow it, and have to leave behind everything else that you know to be true, because you can't ignore. And I got kicked out for what they call touching the ark, which is asking too many questions to simplify it. I was like, but why? And they're like, just have faith, Stephanie. You don't need to know why. And I'm like, but I feel something different, and it doesn't feel like what you're saying.
Yeah.
And that was that knowing in my head, and that this somewhere, look, I have good intentions. I'm not here to downplay religion or downplay anyone's belief, because that would genuinely go against what I've learned in the 32 years of my life, is that we're not here to judge one another. We're not here to tell each other what you believe. We're not here, but ultimately, if what they were telling me was what I believe now, yeah. But in a different sense.
One thing I could say, like, through my studying, and this is just me, I've studied every religion, I've studied every culture, I've studied the esoteric, I've studied the occult, I'm in a mystery school myself, and I'll tell you what I've come to believe, what I know, is the world is what you believe it is. And
yes,
everybody, not just Perakee, anybody's a powerful manifester. It's how much you believe in yourself. Now, when you get two people together believing the same thing, that's more powerful. 3, 4, 5. So what your dad was doing in the Jehovah's Witness and the Christians and the Jews and the Muslims, any of them, what they're doing is because that, when you start talking about those numbers of people, millions of people believing in something, it makes it true. It makes it true, and it makes it real. That's why they protect it. An egregore is a term I learned last summer, and it was so weird with synchronicities. Once I read a book about it last July, they started coming up in other podcasts, and by October, it showed up on Joe Rogan. Some guy says to Joe Rogan, do you know what an egregore is? He goes, no, I don't. Tell me. So this young guy, a ghost hunter type of guy, was explaining, and what an egregore is like, it's something that everybody, like Jesus is an egregore, or even a sports team can be an egregore. It's the focal point of energy of a mass of people, and it could become a real thing. Like Jesus is real if you believe in it, and like if you want to be religious or believe in anything, I would say pick one of the big ones, because it's going to be the most real, because there's the most amount of people believing in it, and that's probably gonna be the most powerful thing for you. My personal path is I'm a Ronin. I kneel to no gods, and I'm going to be my own god and decide my own things and do my own path because of my understanding of this consciousness and this power. My church is nature, and my understanding is the universe, and that I'm just as powerful as anybody and everybody. and basically just believe in love and being good to people, right? I do not like organization,
and this
or control,
organizational, yeah,
or like the control. The thing is what was done to you through Jehovah's Witness or any religion. What they know, what the truth is the pure gold in this world is your consciousness,
yes,
your attention, what you're thinking about, what you're praying to, what you're meditating to, who you're praying to. And that's why they keep such a tight noose on it, because, man, we need all of our kids, we need everybody all focusing on our God so that our team will win. So
yes,
we already won.
it's a numbers game.
We're already gods. We're already gods that could do anything, living in a video game matrix. So,
and see, this is the thing, Brad.
I listen to all of them, but I follow none of them.
Well, what was really lucky too, and I guess the other side of, yes, there was my father, who was he, migration from England, had a very, very structured upbringing himself, all based in fear, and I see the generational trauma he endured too. So it isn't just partial to say, these Indigenous, yes, they did go through what they went through, but then we have all these generations of descendants of the English and all of these people who did the invading that have to live with what their ancestors did too. And deep guilt is a hard thing for people to move through, and that's just as difficult. That's just as deep a wound as what it affected both sides just as much, realistically. That play of power is always. And so my mother's side, being Indigenous, now my mother's story, like I said, she had quite a hard upbringing. It wasn't until she was 6 in Australia that Aboriginals were actually deemed as humans and allowed to be in public without a white person present. They had to have a license or a pass.
After horses and dogs?
There was horses and dogs, definitely. Yep. So this was only.
I was
this
just
was
making the choice.
Oh yeah,
Aborigines became
So this was only 60. Yeah, so this was only 60 years ago. Yeah, that's it. We were considered flora, not fauna, like flora and fauna. So when the English came here, they categorized us as an animal or a plant, because we didn't talk.
And you guys were all psychic. That's why.
Yeah. And we spoke with, if we did use sound, it was vibrational sound. It was through our instruments. It was grunts, groans, much very,
Look at didgeridoo. Look at didgeridoo. Yes. That's one of the trippiest instruments ever.
Fun fact, didgeridoo is what the white men named it because of the sound it made, but it's called a yidiki here, is what we used to name it, yidiki, which means a healing sound. Yeah, so, but that's the thing though, we obviously call it didgeridoo. It's a creational vibrational sound, so they believe if a woman plays the yidiki, they'll fall pregnant. So I'm not allowed to play one, but I have. My elder allowed me to, because he said that sound is very, very, very important to me. Very, very important to me. Song can make me cry, to happy, and I use it a lot within my work. I use a lot of instruments. But yeah, so I was lucky enough to have my mother's side. Now, she was actually fostered at 14 by an English family, is how she met my father, and they were Jehovah's Witnesses too. So there's many kind people within this religion, and while around 13, I went through quite a hard time with it all. I left home. All my brothers and sisters had left home before me too. None of them stayed within the religion. But yeah, so I left home at 15. But growing up with my mum, my dad did a lot of missionary work. So we would go out to these really small Aboriginal communities where there's nothing but red dirt. And the stars, Brad, they're almost, I can't tell you what the stars look like when there's no light around, not a single light coming from Earth.
I understand. I've lived most of my life as a miner. I've been in the Arctic. I've been in northern.
How beautiful is it?
I've been in the most remote places in Canada to see like the northern lights that are behind me, and
I swear it gives me energy.
Spectacular.
And in all of the dream time, so we got to go out there and incorporate into it. And if you go into these deep rich Indigenous communities that aren't touched at all. And while Dad was there to preach to them, I understand that they ended up preaching to us. You can't help it. And, you know, everyone thinks they accepted your dad. He's so white. And I'm like, not to be racist, you know, they're just, you know, and they loved him because he loved their culture. And one thing I will give to my dad is he has a deep, deep love for nature. And he's always, we spent a lot. I wasn't homeschooled by any means, but when we were traveling, they would school me on the road. And so I was very lucky to travel to a lot of remote parts of Australia and be in contact with some beautiful parts of nature. And the people and the places and the diversity here. Oh, sorry, Brad. That's my low power telling me. But I got that contrast of that deep religious, spiritual upbringing, spiritual in that sense, upbringing, but then that spiritualness and deep connection to nature and love that we got from visiting these communities and being around these people and learning about the earth. And they taught me a lot that I didn't realize I retained all of these years. Moving out of home at 15, I was very agnostic. I was so against religion. I was angry. I was a very angry teenager. I hated the world, Brad. I didn't want love. I didn't understand love. I only knew love as conditional. And ultimately, so what they call, I got kicked out for called touching the arc. Now, they don't know this, but ARC stands for, in psychology, awareness, regulation, and communication. And so I kept wanting to know more. They said, you need awareness and you need to be able to regulate that. And then you need to be able to communicate that, right? And I said, how? And they said, you just do.
No, bullshit.
And I wanted to know how.
You can't regulate awareness. That's an ability. An ability.
You can be aware of something, you know, and you can,
Your awareness should not be bridled. It should be wide open. The regulation is the struggle of life, and then you are trying to learn how to communicate what you've learned to people.
But this is where they would go wrong. They were aware of a greater power or a greater source of energy around us.
Yeah.
But they didn't know how to regulate it. And I wanted to know. I'm like, you're telling me that there's this spiritual energy. So in you know, mind, body, spirit, right, in spirituality, within religion would be God, Son, and the Holy Spirit.
Yeah.
So,
the Trinity is in every religion.
Yeah. And within spirit, it's the mind, body, and the spirit, and the combination of the two. Another word for mind would be ego. And this is where I think words, this is why in Indigenous cultures you'll find that they didn't speak with words, because it was all energy. Words is where the need to label things and the need to put words into it's the communication that they're going wrong. If they can't regulate what they're seeing, they can't communicate it correctly. Yeah.
Right. And
so they become scared of God. They're scared of God. They're scared of his power. If you don't follow him, you're going to be smited down, right? So that's where they can't regulate it. They're acting from fear. So then when they're trying to speak their truth to me, I could feel their fear in their words, and I didn't understand. I was scared of Armageddon. I was scared of God. So I just was like, no, I don't want to know religion. It was frustrating to me.
I just want to jump in here just because I'm ADD thoughts and it'll escape me. So one thing I find really interesting is that I learned and I've heard, and you say the dream time, how Aborigine people spoke telepathically with images rather than words. I've also heard, read, studied through the esoteric and occult that when you speak, that's casting spells, right? And like always be very careful, especially Perakee or double simians. Are highly emotional, sensitive people. And I know when I've been angry and when I've fucking said something to somebody that it happens. Like I have to be very careful what I say and how I direct my energy. It's made bad things happen to people, and I felt horrible. When I was young, a teenager, when you're super emotional, I would wish bad on people and it would happen. I recognized it very quickly and have tried my best to not let that happen. But I find it very interesting that your people used to speak through their minds. So when they spoke, so probably that's only reserved for ceremony, magic, casting spells, making something happen. Otherwise, we're just talking mind to mind. Oh yeah, we're gonna cook some fish. We got to get a deer. We got to do this or that. But when you need something to happen, you speak it. You speak your truth. You make it reality. You should reserve that energy, because all of this is vibration, right? Light is vibration, sound is vibration, energy is vibration. And when you're putting emotion behind it, behind all three, when you can visualize, vocalize, and emotionalize those, that's a powerful thing.
And to explain it. Yeah, definitely. And to explain it, it's like, you know, when you're in company and you know the energy of the room, you know, when someone's angry, you don't feel safe around them, you know, and it isn't always about the words that they're saying. It's their body language, how they hold themselves, the way that they're projecting out their energy, you know, vibes, you know, how people are like, no, bad, but that's intent. And it is important in every single form of energy manipulation. So, and emotion is energy in motion. Emotion is energy in motion within our bodies. And when we use our emotion to speak for us, which is when you think about deep emotion, people say, I have no words. There's a reason for that. We know each other's energy, and that's why we can feel when their words aren't aligning with what their body's saying. We can feel, whether you're simian or not, humans can feel that.
That's why you and I both speak with our hands like crazy people. I always do that too, and I understand that, and I've been told that, like, when I think you told me today, like, when we can't shut up, you say it's channeling, and I'm like that too, and I'm intense, and people are like, man, you were being way too intense last night when you were talking. And it's like, oh, I'm not trying to be, I'm just coming from my heart, right? Like, I was not trying to hurt anybody or be too intense. But when I get on a rhythm, when I get on something I'm trying to say, I'm having just the flow come through me, whatever God or energy or ether you want to think it is coming through me, and I hit rhythms, and I have lots of people tell me, they're like, oh my God, like, that was awesome what you said, you connect, I really connected with what you're saying, this and that. But like, on the other hand, I can, if people aren't vibrating the same or may not be the same, and maybe I'm the wrong one reading the energy of the room,
if they're not open
I really offend people. I really offend people, or they don't like, they either love me or hate me, right?
I actually have been feeling
I'm the good or bad. It doesn't mean I'm good or bad, or they're good or bad. We're just not on the same vibration, and it does not, neither one.
And if you'll notice, Brad, it's not just your hands moving, it's your shoulders too, and your hips will actually be moving. It's our whole body speaking, and you can tell what your body's trying to tell you. So you know, confidence, people think confidence comes from putting your chest out, right? And while it's true on a psychological level, if you actually look at my side profile, if I put all my chest out, I'm not, it's my head's pushed. This is our heart and head balance, right? Good posture has nothing to do with forcing our shoulders back or chest out. It's just aligning our heart and our head so that they can speak as one. And that's true confidence. It's not about being overbearing. And I think that's where us Simians are really struggle, sometimes becoming so much from our heart. And they're like, wow. And people aren't used to overflow. And as you can see with my hands, interestingly enough, the speaking with the hands, that's how I do my Reiki. I was taught traditionally with Reiki, but I'm very, very much, I use very much mantras. As you can see, my hands are shaking now. Oh, you might not yet.
And that's energy
flowing through me.
You know what cymatics? So for people that don't know, that are listening, a quick, easy way to understand it is they'll take a speaker, they'll put a piece of paper over it, they'll put some sand on it, and you can play each different tone, and it makes a geometric shape. So like what I think what you're saying is, when you're speaking, like how I do, I try not to do it because it looks weird with my digital background. They say don't move too much, but if somebody was here in person, exactly what you do, I'm talking and doing all this kinds of things, and this is all subconscious. I don't know why or how I do it, but is that because of the energy being projected from me and I'm just shaping it and doing, you know what I mean? Like
I can make people cry or laugh or burp.
Yeah.
Just without words, I could just, you give me 20 minutes and you'll start crying, or depending on where I could make people laugh, like the Heyoka. I'm an amplifier, whatever I want you to feel. Again, if I want you to feel bad, and this is actually funny, as I had my son. So fun fact, my son is, they call him autistic or whatever. He was nonverbal till he was 4 years old. He didn't say a word. So I learned body language from him. He was my first child. I have 4 children technically. He's the only child earthside. But he didn't speak till he was 4. So I had to learn from him how to relearn body language. Otherwise, I couldn't care for my son or to understand what he was trying to tell me with his body. That's when I started learning Reiki too, did my first level. I learned traditional Usui Reiki, which is, Reiki is just the Japanese word for energy. Rei meaning the sun ki. Same thing as Chi during martial arts. Sorry, before I started Reiki, my best friend at the time, who I was saying I was living with, that studied, she wanted to start learning self-defense. And the only thing we had at the time around us, which by chance now I get why it aligned with me so much, was Filipino Kyusho. Filipino Kyusho works off being able to hit an energy center correctly and with using their energy against them, so you don't drain your own energy, right? As opposed to, say, wrestling or Muay Thai, where it still works off the energy centers, but this originated in the Philippines. So I'm little. I'm never going to be able to fight. More or less every person out there is bigger than me. And while I am strong in many ways, not just, I'm a very fit person. I've always been into sport, but I am a small female. So I had to learn how to defend myself quickly and efficiently, as opposed to wrestle someone to the ground and then win that way. And I realized by learning this, I got up to brown belt. If I can use this intent, and they teach you about that fire in your belly, same thing as intent. That fire in your belly, the reason you're doing it will always be the original source behind the power you wield, right? Our intent, manifestation, same thing. And that fire in that belly, I thought, if I could use this to hurt someone so badly, imagine what I could do if I loved them instead. Knowing that hate and fear is so much weaker than pure love. Yeah. And that's when I started learning, and I was learning about breath and energy centers, already through, I was very lucky to have a Shihan and a sensei and a grandmaster who flew over. He was from England, believe it or not. There's that connection again. My trainer was also English.
Yeah. Can I ask you? I find this fascinating. So through the martial arts, if somebody is attacking you and you're going to go to defend yourself, to hit them with an energy center, so then you hit them with love. If they're coming at you with hate or ill intention, then you hit them with love and understanding. Is that how you have to do it to beat it, right? Would that be the philosophy?
More or less. The principles of martial arts vary from Reiki. I use love with Reiki. So if I'm getting come at with a negative force, I will always overcome that with love. Yeah. And if that's anything I think that I could pass on to any double Sibian, is that understanding that there's always going to be fear in us. Yes, we're humans, or, and as that side, we're going to fear what's coming, or we're going to fear the power or fear the things that come in. I think you yourself spoke about having a bad experience while in astral travel. And while fear is normal, and you're going to feel it, I'm not saying we can avoid that, but how we can then overcome that next time it comes along is with love, and love it regardless. Because ultimately, anything we fear and anything else is a mirror inside of us. The only thing we fear is ourselves, really, and what we're capable of. And that comes down to the Reiki principles too. Yeah. So with martial arts, funnily enough, the first thing we learn is to absorb. Is to take in. If someone's coming at you with hateful energy, you take it from them. and then you use it back against them as a defense mechanism. And it's not about hating that person, it's about mirroring it back to them, saying, I don't want this. It's more about protection, martial arts is. And hence why, like, the Art of War and, you know, famous other double simians like Genghis Khan and Attila the Hun very much were mastered in the art of war. Which ultimately we all should be. It's very important to be able to protect ourselves, because while humans never mean to hurt one another, we also, you know, we can't absorb that and then not do anything with it. If we take it in, that's when we're very much responders. So we need to be able to respond to everything. Now, I'm not saying everyone go out and learn martial arts, although I highly recommend it if you struggle with anger, because that was the other thing. I had incredible amounts of anger inside of me from a young kid. At 17, I tried to take my own life. And I had a very self-harm from 11 onwards. And I had another, from about 11 until 23, I was bad for self-harming, very angry. It wasn't until I had my son that I knew I needed to do something with this, hence the martial arts and finding healthy channels, because it's not about there being anything wrong with you. It's about, like our hands tell us, it can flow together. You just have to allow it all to connect. And martial arts taught me, like I said, that intent is so important. Intent is so important, and that we are essentially all mirrors. Energy is opposing. So with Reiki, we learn entrainment, which is if you can be a higher vibration, then things will naturally fall and align with you, around you. Kind of like what we'll speak, manifestation too, and that's how it works. If we stay happy and healthy and loving, then we attract. Abundance comes in many forms. People go straight to money. While money is a man-made thing, technically it is an energy, but it's a second energy to abundance, the feeling of stability. And Reiki was key to me. Now, I don't like to call what I do overall in my sessions as Reiki, because I also learned pranayama. Prana is another word for energy, from more Indian belief. So prana, ki, chi, all of it means energy. All of it.
I've done Kundalini yoga. I was really drawn to that, and I had a really great teacher for a couple of years, but she moved away to a separate island up the road and just does it through Zoom.
Always move away.
But,
I'm actually learning yoga and Tai Chi. Yeah, I'm learning. I'm currently studying yoga and Tai Chi because I can never stop learning. And I love it. And I have a business called In Body Alchemy, because I do believe it's a system of alchemy of within us. Alchemy being that balance of energy and how we can utilize it, and it's all there for a reason. None of it isn't useful. And so being, I suppose, the Reiki comes down to 5 principles too, right? We learn with Reiki to not to worry. Now, these principles they always start with just for today, because they understand that we're not always capable of these things, right? But to not worry it sounds like a big ask, but when we catch ourselves in that moment in excess worry, it's about slowing down and coming back into this moment. It's reminders of living in the here and now, because our energy centers are all connected to one another. Now, there's 7 chakras, but there's actually 9 realistically. But we'll start with the 7 to make it, based off the 8 and the 9. I've met very few people with all 8 chakras open. Alaric, who you've had on this podcast, being one of them. And I hold very high respect for people who can achieve that, because ultimately it comes down to keeping the vessel healthy and be able to keep up with these energies. Which I'm currently struggling with at the moment, and he's helping me through with my diet and stuff like that. But it comes down to finding our truth. Now, what I think people find hardest with energy manipulation and working with energy and using it for good is knowing how to feel energy in the first place, if that makes sense. That starting that baseline of what am I working towards? Yeah, you're like, how I'm not
Did
sure
you
where I'm starting with.
did you when you were young hear like old TVs and computer monitors and those things? Like I knew when somebody, I could be on the third floor or the basement floor. I knew when somebody turned a TV on in the house or turned a computer monitor, and I can hear the frequencies of the energies change as appliances were turned on. I'm super
Yes,
sensitive to energy. I went
I can
went
still do it. I can hear when the fridge, when some like a fridge is doing a certain thing or changing. Like, and I don't have an old fridge, but I can hear when appliances are like either feeding energy into it or not.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? Like hot water systems too?
Well, it's EMF sensitivity. I think I was in grade 6. I went on a field trip up to Penticton, and they have like a, do you know what SETI is? Like the satellites where they're listening out into
Yeah.
the universe,
Yeah.
listening for radio signals. So on the top of a mountain in British Columbia, they have these satellites and series working together. And when I went to go there on a field trip, and I couldn't even get within a half kilometer of the the installation. My head was just screaming, and I was
Sorry,
like,
hang on 2 seconds.
yeah. My,
All right. Yeah,
right,
sorry.
my head, the high pitched frequencies in my head as a 12-year-old, as the bus got closer to this installation, and my mom was on the trip with me. I'm like, I got to get off this bus, man. I'm feeling nauseous. And I
Yeah.
could tell it was the closer I was getting to the installation with the satellites, whatever
Sounds
frequency
loud.
they
Hey.
were receiving or whatever. I had to get out, and they had to let us out on the road. I couldn't get any closer to that building, and I've always been super sensitive to frequencies and changes in energies, and whether it be people, electricity. One thing I noticed, working underground, miles underground, I'm in a remote place. There's no cell service. There's barely an electrical grid, just what runs the mine. Once you go underground, there's nothing. There's no Wi-Fi. There's no cell.
Yeah.
There's barely an electrical grid. We have VHF radios that we talk through a little wire. And I am the most relaxed and at peace when I'm there. And then I come back into civilization, and I'm around all the electrical grids and frequencies and cell
Yep.
networks and Wi-Fi's, and I can notice a tension in my body immediately, coming back
Yep.
into civilization.
And
because I
we're
spent most of my life
biometrical.
talking.
Yeah, when we realize the science behind who we are, we're like biometrical beings. Like I could talk about energy centers and chakras and stuff, all of that too. But when it comes down to the basic science of it, we're biometrical beings. When we realize that every single thing on this planet is made out of 92 elements and nothing, a combination of it's alchemy. Everything that exists in this world is alchemy. Therefore, parts of you exist in everything around you. It's just rearranged differently. And
Stephanie,
what we are is we're energy vibration, right? We're particles. So what makes a particle become physical matter is how much it vibrates. We vibrate at such a level that we then become physical matter. Does that make sense?
Oh,
you know
100%.
how when sound's loud enough, you can see it? Like even if you're not a simian or whatever, anyone, you can see sound. Like you said,
everything is just a frequency, right? Color, sound.
Everything is. Yep. Science
Stephanie,
will tell you.
Could you have something you could set your camera on? It's really shaky.
Sorry, I'm holding it
switch
because
up?
I got my charger in. But is that better?
I'm really stoned. You're making
There we
me
go.
dizzy.
See, I'm shaking too. And see, this is the thing is, we have all of these rivers of energy within our body, and Reiki teaches you that not only do we have our chakra centers, but we have these meridians, right?
Yep.
And so there's one that runs through the front of us from the base of your private parts, for lack of a better word. You know, that the area between your private parts and your bum, that's your root. And there's one that runs through the front that's called our governing vessel. No, conception vessel, sorry. And then the one runs through the back, which is called our governing vessel. Now, our governing vessel is actually our nervous system. So it runs through our spine and up through the base of our heads. Hence why yawning helps relax. There's a lot of energetical things I could go into, I suppose. But ultimately, with our energy systems, get this, they all vibrate at a certain tone, and I can tell you the math behind it. But the crown chakra is 10 times stronger than the rest. And when you reach your crown chakra being fully opened, the vibration you're at is 144,000.
Perfect.
And so that's where, you know, no matter what I learned, that number kept coming up, whether it be through martial arts or if I was studying Reiki, when I was learning pranayama breathwork, a certified pranayama breathwork practitioner too, mostly for myself. I don't know about you, Brad, but do you find you hold your breath a lot when doing tasks and things like that?
Also, the 144,000 synchronistically has showed up my whole life many, many times. But yeah, breathing.
And it will continue to.
Breathing is something that I have sleep apnea really bad too. So I have to have, I don't have to, but I'm supposed to use my breathing machine when I sleep at night. I didn't want to at first because I have such a crazy dream world that I thought maybe that was why, because I was very low blood oxygen and possibly almost passing over. And they told me, even when I had to do the test, they said, man, you're getting down to like almost 60% blood oxygen. You're getting halfway to death. But whether I use it or not, I still seem to have just as crazy of dreams. But yeah.
The other thing I think that the dream thing's very typical of simians too. I had something as a child called Alice in Wonderland syndrome, where I think disassociation almost from my outside world could do that very easily. But the voice, not voice in my head like I'm crazy, but you know how we all have that voice in our head that narrates our thoughts, right? Yep. And it would go like loud it was always like this urgent shouting at me, but it was like the sound of that voice was going far away and like orbiting around my head, but getting closer. And as it would get closer, it would be like, hey, like, you know, and it would just distort my sound perception. And then as that would happen, it would feel like the walls would go really close to me and then away. And I'd freak out as a kid. And like, and like I spent so much time at doctors as a kid, but it was hard for me because there was also that spiritual element of dad telling me you need to stop letting, like this is going to make my dad sound awful, but he genuinely full on believes in that I'm going to die. That he was like, you need to stop letting these demons in the house, like you can't do this, like block it out. And I would get so upset and be like, I'm trying, and it would just end up making me angry because, as you know, we can't block it out. I truly believe that, like we were saying, but what you choose to believe in is always your own reality. I think aliens and angels are the same thing.
Yeah.
It's just what we choose to see or believe.
You're a natural born shaman, which I think lots of people are, not just double simian or Perakee, but especially most Perakee are probably most likely supposed to be shamanistic or leaders in spiritual senses. I believe we are high voltage people, very wide open and connected, not even through our own choice, to the spirit world or to the other world. And that, we've all kind of been out here on our own through life, trying to navigate it without anybody to help us interpret these feelings, these thoughts, these dreams. And I think lots of people are that way. I think it's happening more and more. That's why you have more and more people on antidepressants, antipsychotics, anti-anxiety.
It's an awakening.
Because what is reality, right? It's really subjective. That's been proven through quantum physics, double split observer theory. It is just because somebody's hearing voices or seeing things or having visions doesn't mean they're crazy. I would say the people that are all seeing the same reality that's been told to them from their fucking television, those are the crazy people. Those are the brainwashed people. They're all being fed the same story from the same not even the same. All the different news channels all say the same thing. Those. Do you want to know something insanely interesting? Those are the crazy people.
So I work alongside a lot of free birth mothers, home doulas and stuff like that with energetics of bringing new souls earthside, and it's honestly something I love doing, and something that I actually learned that I didn't know before, working alongside these beautiful medicine. They all come, a lot of them studied in Peru, with the like Mayan cultures, and the way that they treat birth is beautiful. But they taught me that when a woman is giving birth, they essentially, there's DMT being constantly released from the pineal gland during that process. So it's like a rebirth of them too. And it's like that's what gives them, I suppose, that superpower. It's not a superpower by any means, but that's it, but you know how they say, like, it's such a painful thing. They tell you how it's painful and rah, rah, rah. But if you allow that DMT and that pineal gland to do its job through that birthing, it's not painful. It shouldn't be painful. Babies weren't supposed to be coming out crying,
It's helping the transition into a new being, right? Before
allowing it to be, yeah.
Being an adolescent or unbirthing female before.
Yeah.
Making sure I'm saying everything without offending anybody.
No, yeah, that's the hard part.
Then when you do, you become a whole other thing. It's the same as being a father, right? Once those kids are born, even though you haven't been carrying them, I mean, man, I was a wild demon before my kids, man. I used to smoke crack. I was crazy, man. I was crazy. I was wild as a wildebeest. And then you see those children, and I've had with the birthing of my children, super significant spiritual experiences where there was the mom had a C-section. And I was the first person that got to hold the baby before the mother, because she had to be sewn back up. And I picked that baby up, and something exploded out of my chest that felt like it went as wide as the whole universe, and then back in between me and that infant. One of the most amazing, stunning spiritual experiences of my life, right? So once you have kids, male or female, whether you're the one that carried them and birthed them or not, which is a tremendous,
and that's the thing about it being your kid.
You're a new being, you're a new entity once that's happened.
Yeah. And that's your life force that's been nurtured too. So it's still that deep connection, whether you're the mother or the father. And it's it's the same muscles within the body. When you orgasm, is the same muscles that birth the child. It's all the that connection of harboring those life forces within you and being able to, it's truly special. And until as such as yourself experience something like childbirth, no matter who you are, it changes your life. And that feeling you felt explode out of your chest, that's universal love. And you can arguably say it's stronger than any hate you've ever felt in your heart, any anger. It would defeat that. If you could feel pure anger but you saw your child in danger, the love of your child would overtake that. And that's where that concept of martial arts comes in. You are to only use it for love ultimately. Yes, you might be fighting that human, but it's not about killing them. It's not about hurting them back. It's about protection of self, and in the long term, hope. Does that make sense? Like,
it's primal. It's primal energy.
Ultimately.
Yeah. As I see it, it's primal energy, which is always represented by a serpent, a snake, a dragon, something like that.
The serpent and the dove inside of us both. And peace and
that's what I mean. Like, any other Perakee I talk to, or it could be anybody. I am 110% anything I do. If I love you, if I hate you, if I want whatever, it's coming at you 110%. I'm way too intense when I care about you. And if I hate you, buckle up, motherfucker, because it's going to be a pile of intense energy. And it is that energy that sexual procreates life, or fight a bear to survive, because a bear or a panther is trying to kill you. That intensity that you need to survive and stab it and kill it so that you live, it is the same as sexual energy, spiritual energy. Although it's raw, it's the
raw
force that makes life. That's why, like, it's not all just hippy dippy. Like, I'm a hippie, half hippie, but I'm also a miner. But life is like, people like to think, oh, nature and beautiful. But Well, no, nature, a fucking bear will climb a tree and eat
Oh,
the
hell
eagles.
yeah.
Whatever, it does what it has to survive and to continue the
Yep.
DNA, the genetic code, the signal, the frequency to keep going and expanding.
It's
And
all self-sustaining, and it knows that naturally.
yeah, yeah.
And this is where, like I said, that human need to label things and communicate things too much with words and things like I do astrology, and I could tell you your birth chart, but ultimately what I'm trying to tell you is it means nothing apart from trying to figure out who you are more intimately. We're also, even our own palms, we might all share these lines, but we're also I don't know much about palmistry, to be much like you. Only reason I learned anything about palmistry was I asked the palm, like I've asked so many palmist people to read it, and they're like, no. I'm like, okay. Why are you scared? They full on, I see this look in their face, and they're like, no, thank you. And I'm like, what do you mean, no, thank you? I'll pay you money. So I learned a little. I know my palms a little bit, but it's like it's this human need of needing to dissect everything. And while it is useful, ultimately it'll all come around to you need to let it flow and do its job, because that awareness, we can be aware of it, but then we need to allow it to regulate itself. The more we try to seek balance, it can unbalance things. Like you said, we could sit near a peaceful river and enjoy the view, but then a couple of miles down the river there's a bear mauling fish. It all works as one, I suppose, and that is the river that goes across our hands. Is it will meander. There'll be times when we'll need to move into that berserker side of us where we can harness the dark or the jinn or the demon inside, because we will need to for our loved ones and the ones around us, and to keep us safe.
Yeah,
But
it's greatly protected. The first person that I didn't know until I was 22 about these simian lines on my hands. I was at a full moon ceremony, and the lady also happened to be a palm reader, and she's going around doing everybody, and she does me, and she's like, "Holy shit!" She's like, "I've only ever heard about this." She's like, "This can either be really, really good or really, really bad." And I've always messed with palm readers ever since. But it was funny you said that, how they don't want to read your palms. I've been in metaphysics shops and this and that, but I've gone in and be like, "Oh, I'd like to get my palms read, this or that." Same thing you said. I'll be like, "Oh yeah," I'm like, "Just have a look at this. I want to get my palms read. I feel weird." And they look and they're like, "No, we're all full today. That's not." Oh, how about
sorry.
No, we don't want to. They think, which freaks me out, because in lots of religions, lots of faiths, lots of beliefs, we're demons. But I've come to believe and get settled with myself. No, we just have the capacity. We're conductors. We're conduits of strong primal life force energy, universal life force energy, courses through us, and it does have a high potential to be dangerous. It has the potential to be the greatest thing. It's all your intention behind it, and learning how to wield it and yield it. No one to hold.
And this is where that intent comes down to. Even with our knowledge and us sharing what we're doing, we're not sharing it to be this sense of superiority, like, oh, look, we've got these special markings, and oh, we're depicted here as Elohim and Wazuri, and oh, Aladdin's about us, and you know that, right? Aladdin being
I'm an A1 fuck up. I've been for most of my life, but I've been gifted and I've been guided and I've stumbled my way through.
Dude.
I've stumbled my way through, and I have a pretty terrific life, and I'm just trying to understand this energy. I felt strange. I felt weird. I don't feel like anybody understands me. That's why I started this podcast, so I could talk to other weird people, other freaks, other people trying to understand this reality and what is going on with themselves, and that may bring me to connecting with people. Helps me understand more about myself, because I find a lot more, not even just Perakee, people in general that are into the abstract thinking or the paranormal, ghost, alien stuff, whatever, their minds are more open. I connect with them really easy, and I find a sense of peace and understanding and connectedness.
You see it all,
Yeah, it's a beautiful thing.
It is, and to share that from a place of, and I think this is where we're always going to get that frustration with humanity, in that sense of, it makes so much sense to us, and sometimes, and we want to tell them, but we don't want to sound like we're trying to tell them what to do either, because we know that that's not what it's about at all. Yeah. We each hold specific information that can help one another. Like, I'm learning from you today, you're learning from me, and that is what community is about. It's all being about being open to one another, to learn and engage and absorb, and you know what I mean, that give and take is the only way it can work. And from my experience within, it's funny how you said we're all shamans. Now, I wouldn't consider myself a shaman. I'm only 32 years of age, and I now see that that's not very old. I used to think I was old, and now I'm like, I'm so young. But I have it within my community. I'm the one who runs the circles, and I have my shaman drum, and I love it. I do it every month, and I love what I do. However, lately I've been getting I feel this urgency. I feel like we've all felt lately, of being like, there's a bigger picture than this, guys. We need to stop bickering over the small crap. And, you know, all the parts of life that ultimately don't matter in the long run, that it comes down to just loving one another and accepting one another. And I get this frustration with humanity. And there's days where I swear I could just tell them that I hate humans, and it makes my heart feel so closed off and so bitter. And that's when I can feel that darker side of me not do its job. And that's what I mean by within, yes, there's that demon inside of us. It has a purpose. It's not about ignoring it. It's about making sure it's doing its job. And we're using the love when we need to be putting more love into something. Like I said, we're responders. So if we respond to something with more hate, then it's going to make it bigger.
That's the thing. Like, I've really gotten into Christ in the last, I don't know, I've been at it my whole life, but in the last few months, lots into Kabbalah, lots into Esoteric, lots into the occult, lots into Carl Jung, and the dark side, like getting in touch with your shadow and your dark side, and studying all of that. And it's like, it's nothing to be ashamed of or afraid of, or this, that. Everybody has dark thoughts. Everybody has primal thoughts. Everybody has all those sorts of things. And it's about this energy, which is really strong in Perakee. I think we have it amplified or turned up to 11 or something. It's about what you're going to do with it. Because I know inside, I know my higher self, I want good for everybody. I want to do, if I had $1 million, I would give away 99% of it. Like, that's how I feel with my energy. I want my purpose in life to be here to help other people and to raise up mankind as a whole. I think that's my purpose here. So that's what I'm choosing to do with my so-called demonic energy. And I'm a very earthly person. I'm a very nature, dark energy person. Now, there's dark earthly energies, and there's etheric, which you're trying to raise yourself up to the angels or God or whatever, which is
but it's like any element
maybe at, but it's about having that energy from below and raising it and bringing it and balancing,
using it for the right reasons.
Yes,
like fire. You could use fire to warm you and sustain you, or you could use it to burn down a village. Water. It could be. We need water to live, but if we're drowned in it, it's no good.
Yeah, it sustains life, or you could drown.
There's toxic positivity is just as much as there's toxic negativity. And it's that yin and yang, or that yin and yang, of it being a symbiosis. It isn't even just a physical 3D shape. It is so expansive and more intricate than you could ever imagine. But it's not about always breaking it down into intricacies. It's just understanding that it all has its purpose.
Definitely.
Hello, I'll straighten my. Do you want to know something funny? I've propped my phone up on rocks because I have rocks everywhere. Is that something else you do when you go through the forest? Do you collect things?
Yes. Me and my kids always did. I don't do it so much more that they're growing up, and I do most of my adventures alone. But we used to all kinds of cool shells and rocks and sticks and.
I was just checking my.
Do you remember where we are on the thread we were on there?
2 seconds. put my headphones back in. Sorry
I'll
about
edit
that.
I'll edit all this out, but I'm
You
just trying to
have
remember what was the thread we were on there, because it was consciousness.
those energies, yeah, the energies
Okay.
within us, and that's where they even break it down within psychology with things like, you know, when they, I don't know if you, being ADD, they may have spoken to you about it through your diagnosis, and it's all linked. The, you know, cognitiveness delays, or whatever they want to call it, or the executive functions and all of that. It's all mind, body, spirit, for whatever term you want to use. And you know, we get what we were talking to before. You know how you were saying our words are that's why they call it spelling, because it's casting spells or intention. That's words are speaking what we're thinking. It's our communication, and etymology is a massive passion of mine, because it's really helped me understand how to connect all three together. Understanding what they are and their purpose, I believe, is integral to understanding who you are and how it applies to you. And this is where the journey becomes a path, and it's not the same for everyone, because there'll be things that apply to us and things that don't, in no matter what we learn, if that makes sense. Like things will apply to us innately and we'll feel it in us, but so say we have to apply it to who we are and whether it fits our journey too. Just because we'll learn knowledge everywhere we go, we'll absorb it, we'll continue, we're like computers. Everything we learn, it somehow. Do you have a photographic memory too? In some terms, like you'll remember random facts.
It works that way. Like I see things, especially with like geography. If I've ever driven somewhere when I was 5 years old, if I was there and saw it, I can go right back to that exact spot, way out in the middle of the forest. Even when grown-ups were saying, no, we're supposed to go left or right, I'm like, no, I remember I came here 12 years ago and we went this way when we were hunting or whatever. I can
memories are portals, energy portals.
Yeah.
And we travel a lot through them as Perakee, and or Wieland, whatever you want to call us, I suppose. Memories are time portals. Yeah, many names, depending on where you come from. All this, like everything, but memories are time portals, and that's how we do that inner child healing, and that's how we do that shadow work. That shadow was placed. We learn everything psychologically within our brain before 7 years of age, right? Up to age 7, we're absorbing. We're like a sponge. Everything we know about relationships, motherhood, patriarch, matrism, every single thing we operate from, we learnt before age 7. And then
your major software download that projects.
It's like it's downloaded in.
But
that's what women are meant to do. This is that.
One thing I want to say to you that I learned, I'm going to try and remember where I learned it from. I think it was the book Watiko. I can't remember the author off the top of my head, but it's about a Native American mind virus and energy that's around that. It's the darkness. It's the shadow, right? And what in the synopsis of it was like, it's okay to be to have energy from the darkness, and we all have dark sides, and this and that. And then in the end, what he was trying to say is like a way to phrase it that European or Christian people or Abrahamic religion people can understand is like, if you're an angel, you're already good. It's good. You're already good. So you being good is no great feat. But if you were a demon who chooses to be good, who chooses to rise, who chooses not to be savage and take for what is theirs, to use because we all have the energies. We're all super good at reading people. We're super good manipulators. We're super good at liars. Anything we want to be, we can manipulate and see energy situations. Play poker against me. Good luck. I'm really good at that sort of thing. But to choose to be better and to choose to rise above and not be the animal, not be the take all for me, to choose to do it for the tribe, for the oneness, for everything. That is truly what good is don't be afraid of that darkness in you. Don't be afraid of that primal energy, whether it be sexual or greed or this or anything like that, recognize that you have it. Say, okay, and I like the term Watiko. Okay, Watiko, I see that you're here. You know, I recognize that you're
That,
here, but you're not driving, buddy. You're not driving. I'm driving. You could be the
mm.
gas. You could be the gas, but I'm holding the wheel. You know.
And it's interesting in Taoism, which is where yin and yang come from. People go, "Oh, it's the dark and the light," which is a kind of the concept of it. But there's so much more to it. They're talking what it actually means when you go down. If you the translation has gotten a little bit lost with these ancient languages. Again, I seem to have a knack for translation and language. And it actually, what it actually says is it's a feminine and a masculine, which has nothing to do with gender, by the way. If I ever speak of feminine and masculine, I am not talking about a male or a female. Yeah. I'm talking about energy. And if I were very much a masculine energy, if you can't tell, I'm not a typical female.
If you get into lots of the parts, sorry, I just have to chime in quick.
No, you're right.
Lots of the angels and all them were all hermaphroditic beings because that's what the perfect balance is. Yeah, when you read all the stuff you're not supposed to read, or when you start correlating all the different religions,
gender doesn't exist.
Yeah, the higher realms of angels, the higher realms of beings, gender does not exist. So sorry to interrupt, but I just need to put
you're absolutely you're backing my point up 100%, and that's why we're often called shimmerers. You know, I don't know if you're up inept with what a shimmer is, but it's the half and half. It's two. It's not one soul being two things, it's two souls combined, as opposed to, and I guess that's what I would describe what I feel a simian is, as opposed to Mahaka, in that sense of with turning two souls merged into one, as opposed to one soul that has two sides to it.
You know something weird? I was a twin, and I was the only one that came out. I've always
my mom was a twin.
I've always been a little chubby, so my family always said that I ate the other one.
You know what? I was reading a story about a woman who didn't know she was a twin in utero, and neither did her mum. But it must, you know, like back then there wasn't as many scans as we have now. And when she gave, one of her children was about 11 years old and needed something DNA wise, and when she obviously went to donate one of her organs, and they were like, "You're actually not a DNA match." And they were like, "How the hell is this possible? I gave birth to this little child. How can I not be a genetic match?" And it actually, the shimra, so when it absorbs at a certain stage, it actually absorbs it doesn't integrate the DNA. It's two separate strands of DNA within the same person. And technically it was her twin, who was female also, was the mother that she had absorbed, was the mother of her child.
Right, yeah, because it's all the same. It's all the same passed down.
So she carried the child in the body, but it came from her twin that's inside of her, not from her. Genetically.
Your mother came from your grandmother's eggs, your great grandmother's. That's how they can trace the 7 daughters of Eve and all that. Yeah, that's
and the 7 stars of Pleiades. You know, all of
Pleiadian?
These the 7. I'm Arcturian, but within my space, we went to Pleiades to get more people before we came to Earth. So I've been to Pleiades. Yes,
I was told I was 14 years old. It's one of my first.
I think you're Pleiades,
awakening. It was one of my first, I don't know if it was awakening, but way before I found out I was double simian. I was 14, and my mom had a hair salon off the back of our house, and I come home from school, not grade 9, probably 14 years old, and I just come through the back, and I'm walking through the back of her salon, and this old lady's got all these foils in her hair and stuff. And she's like, "Stop! Who is that boy? Who's that boy?" And my mom's like, "Oh, that's
they recognize you, hey, yeah."
She's like, "Come, bring him here, bring him here." And I come up to this old lady, and she's like, "You're one of us. You're one of us. You're a Pleiadian. You're here to save the world." And was like telling me how I'm a energetic being that's here to save the world. And I'm like, my soul is like as old as eons, and we've come here to raise. I'm telling you, this is like 1996, and she's telling me you're here to raise the energy vibrational frequency of the planet. She gives me a book called The Bringers of the Dawn about the Pleiadians, and they're speaking about the lizard people, the low vibrational frequencies and entities, and how we're here and we're fighting them. Got told this when I was 14, and I read it,
Blows
and
your mind.
it really resonated with me. And I was just a little young pothead, and I'm like, didn't think much of it. But then again, further on in life, more things, confirming things.
Yeah.
I
See,
read
I
it.
was taught.
I
Yeah,
read
sorry,
it
keep
again
going.
at about 30 years old. I was like, I better read that again. About 11 years ago, and I was like, holy shit!
Can I say something? Sorry. Oh, that's my low battery thing.
Oh, go ahead.
Again. It's so interesting the ages you taught me, because within, I believe Saturn is a big key to something in there somewhere. I believe Saturn's so important to understanding from an astrological cosmic aspect. And Saturn goes through phases like the moon. Yeah. So Saturn's the planet of karma, which is karma, again, is another one of those concepts from Taoism that's been misunderstood. It's got nothing to do with revenge or you being a bad person, again. It actually is a tool that works along Dharma. And no one talks about Dharma because that's not fun to wish Dharma upon people. But Dharma is our purpose in life. And karma is a tool that helps us stay on the path of our Dharma. And when we're not doing something that's aligned with our Dharma, our purpose, karma comes in and gives us that foot in the back to say, hey. So it's not about revenge, or it does work off of get what you give, but more so in a personal sense as opposed to affecting other people. Again, it's that intent. If I'm doing something, it's because I love them. I'm guiding them, not because I want them to be wrong and me to be right. And that's, I think, where religion really goes wrong. In a big sense, it's about right or wrong, and it's not about telling people you can't love this person or you can't be this.
It's a tough pill to swallow too, because under those, and I really subscribe to a lot of those in different ways, philosophies, but there's lots of conspiracies and beliefs behind Saturn, black cube of Saturn, and cults and the esoteric and occult practices. But the more I've learned about those things, well, they may be getting me. Like if somebody's a Freemason or in one of these occult societies, like, oh man, they're always the people running the world. Well, now what I know from studying these things, that you're on a path to be the best possible version of yourself.
Yeah.
And these esoteric traditions and beliefs and teachings and rituals are trying to help you become the best person of
it's hidden knowledge.
Who you are. They're giving you the tools to become who you are or who you want to be. Now, it's up to you. You could do light or you could do dark with it. So I'll tell you, probably most people that are rock stars, movie stars, politicians, I bet they're practicing esoteric and occult rituals and doing the same
wrong
thing
reasons.
that I do. They're meditations. I do daily meditations when I wake up in the morning, my first 15 minutes. And when I go to bed, the last 15 minutes, I try to keep a positive frame of mind. I try to be mindful of what I'm thinking, what I'm feeling, recognizing why. Try to be an observer, not a reactor. Be very careful what I'm putting my energy into. But now I see through studying this and understand the unseen forces, because I'm very sensitive. I can sense them and how they work. Now, you're goddamn right. Anybody ruling the world or ruling their world, their own life, winning, is probably in a mystery school. They may be a Rosicrucian. They may be a Freemason. They may be any of these, an occult, even an Aborigine, an Aboriginal. It's just
they're learning something from somewhere.
It's magic.
Yeah, so, and the thing is, when you think about what exo and ox, like it just means inside. Yeah. It's not meant to sound bad or it sounds mysterious, yes, because it's hidden, and anything hidden sounds bad. Yes,
the church
because they don't want you learning it. Yeah, we don't.
Jehovah's Witness, the Jehovah's Witness, don't you mess around with that.
You know what's funny though? Within the Jehovah's Witness, we were told.
Shooting star.
So the reason we read the Bible every morning is we were taught to learn knowledge, and then to sit with that knowledge, and then to speak with Jehovah for guidance on it. Right. So this is what that realistically is that seeking knowledge, learning the hidden knowledge. within the text, meditating on it, and then speaking with your guides.
Yes.
It's the same goddamn thing.
Over and over again.
And ultimately it's to love one another. The ultimate goal is to, they preach of this, and all of it's true. All of it is in the Bible. It's true. They speak of chakras in the Bible. They took the book of Enoch entirely out, and that's a whole different. Luckily we can find it though. They took it all out, and that's fine. But ultimately, even if you look at the pieces that are there, it even speaks of us within the Bible, the mark of the Elohim, and it being, there's the mark of the beast. They speak well into that, but they don't talk about the mark of the Elohim either, which is Perakee, Zuri, whatever. But it's there. I can show you it. I can show you it. I could show my father it, but they didn't. They said that I was being disrespectful, and I'm like, by not listening to the whole story, I don't understand. And I would get so angry. And back to the ages of Saturn, how I said 7, and then you said 14. What's 7 times 7? 14 was when you started. What was it saying used to happen at 14? Sorry,
I was told there's a Pleiadian, and then
so a piece of knowledge. Piece of knowledge was meant to you that stuck with you forever. Yep.
Yeah, and then 21, probably 21, 22, around, I think. Might have been 23. I got told I was double simian.
Yep. Yeah. And then again, do the math. It's all in 7s almost. Like and Saturn goes through phases in 7s like the moon. Everything goes in phases, not just the moon. All the planets do. And Saturn moves in 7s in our birth chart, and it's a slow moving planet because it's so far away from Earth. So in your chart, it takes 29 years to get all the way around Earth and back to where it was when you were born, at the exact place, right? And you divide that into 7s. They call it a Saturn return. And as you say, a lot of us hit, and if you think of Perakee becoming the last of the Perakee, it happens around that 30 of, that life, that awakening around that 29, 30, 31, where we're like, holy, you're like, oh my God. But then again, like that age 14 for me, that was when something bad happened to me, and then I left home at 15. But ultimately it was that thing that happened to me at that age that pushed me in a certain direction, or something that sticks with you. And then it'll happen again around, I had my son at 22, 23. Much like you, yeah. And then
you know what I'm stoked about? Do you ever read The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy?
That was 42? My dad's favorite movie. Yes.
42. I'm 41 right now, so I'm getting so stoked for being 42 years old, man. I'm like,
I'm actually so stoked.
That's the answer. Maybe my life path will blow up huge.
I have no doubt, and for, like, 6 is a great number. Everyone's worried about 666, and I'm like, it's such a powerful number. 36, like Nikola Tesla, 369 being the answer to everything, and it's so true. It is 100% true. I can't tell you how much 369 comes up, and then multiples of 7 come up for me within all the energetics that I work with. The 7 chakras is directly related to the 7 sins within the Bible. And how those sins would affect the energy within your body.
Yeah.
And that's it's it's the correlations is constant. The 7s on our palm that we make. The day of the Perakee being the 7th of July, being 7/7. My life path number is 7. 7 symbolizes shamanism and spirituality and knowledge and truth. Purple has always, not purple. Indigo. I used to call it purple, but then be like, oh, it's like a blue purple, and it's indigo. I figured out recently. I had to giggle at myself because I think I see colors differently to people sometimes. I think I have synesthesia. However, I don't see auras, but I see energy. I can feel it. Yeah, and it's more vibrational as opposed to a color.
I see like a 6-inch. Like a 6-inch halo.
Mirage?
A mirage is exactly it. Around people and around things and situations. And I can see it. I can see it building. Like if I've normally a lot of my life when I'm not at work or when I'm not consciously trying to be on that spiritual plane, most of the things dull you from that world. But sometimes when I've been there, I've just hit instances, and I can actually see that mirage. Like, there's a movie called Donnie Darko, and it
Oh,
like
I love that
it
movie.
when it came out of that, like it looked like water coming out of their
Hmm.
chest and guiding them around. I've seen that. I've been at like parties, playing poker, and doing this, and then like all of a sudden I started seeing that out of all people, like they're gonna get up and go get a beer, they're gonna get up and go to the washroom, but about 3 seconds before, this water tube came out of their heart chakra and started going
Mm.
first, and then they got up and followed it, and I was just sitting there like, holy shit.
And it begins with, and you know why it would be a couple of seconds or a little bit before they actually do it is that process that happens within our mind body connection of and spirit of it. So how does it go? I think it begins, every feeling creates a thought, that thought creates an action, and then that action then creates a reality. And obviously it's a process. So if he's thought that, his energy's produced his energy in motion, that feeling, you're seeing that energy in motion saying, I need to go to the butt. That's the physical representation of that vibration telling his body, this is where you need to go. Then his mind will comprehend it, then his body will follow. It'll send the signal, you need to pee. Oh, yep, mine. Humans are a bit slow. Nah, we're not. We're really not. We just have
just our bodies.
It takes
only our bodies.
It's how it works, and it's actually quite brilliant when you can see that thought process. And I can actually see that in my son being nonverbal, and that the thought process in him. And I actually know what he's going to say to me. He doesn't. That's how I learned what he was trying to communicate with me. I suppose.
You would have to really cultivate. What you must have to do, or been already doing, is cultivating your psychic potential to be able to communicate with your son being autistic. And I imagine you could probably easily, not just from motherly instincts, but can communicate with him on other levels, like other people don't even understand. Like you don't even.
And he does not stop talking now. He knew how to talk the whole time, Brad, and I know he did, but he just had nothing to say. To be honest, to anyone. He was just like, he'd still to this day, he's a single simian. He'll sing and sing and sing. He sings all the time. Loves singing. But as for like conversation, people are like, how are you? And he's like, but spontaneously he'll start a conversation and he'll just talk on that subject for hours if you let him. So it's selective. If he has something to say, he'll say it. But if he doesn't, it's just like, why do you care how I am? Can't you tell? Like he almost expects you to just know where he's at. And so it has taken me. Yeah, he's there. So why aren't you there? Like, why aren't you on my wavelength?
And that's what I've thought for many, many years, that all like all these things, whether you'd say they're syndromes and all these labels they put on everybody, autistic, or depression or anxiety, or all any of these things are just people. I think did I read a book, or did I hear about it on a podcast about this guy that grew up in South America from a shamanistic lineage, and he'd grown up with all the spiritual practices, but he was actually like off the charts genius who ended up coming to school in America, going to Harvard, going to medical school. And he was like, you guys are all fucked. You guys are all taking pills and shit for spiritual problems. These are energies. These are entities. These are spiritual problems. You guys got it all wrong, man. Like this is how I grew up. I know the truth. And I've integrated with your scientifical material world back through the observable universe. And he's like, you guys are wrong. These people don't need to be on medicines. They need to be initiated into manhood or womanhood. We've
overcomplicated
to find out who they are. They need to find. I think that's the most desperate thing that every person in the Western world is going through. A matter of woman. Who am I? What am I here? What am I doing? Am I just working to pay my mortgage?
What is going on?
What is the point? What is the fucking point of all this? This can't be it. I just go to work just get
it's not. I know we have to do certain things, and I truly believe this is where exactly. Fuck that. That's not and like you know how you were saying in buildings and stuff, you get confused, and when you're down in the cave where there's no interference, you feel calm. And it's like tribes, and down to Aboriginal tribes, but every tribe, ancient tribe that I've studied, and even the shapes of the Mayan buildings and stuff, how it looks grid, that is not by mistake. If they built a structure, they built it with the elements. And this is where I feel like we've gotten like buildings and things and stuff. We just put no thought into what its purpose is to begin with. It's to help us live within the elements, right? But we're purposely working against them. These tribes built theirs geometrically patterned or facing a specific way to work with the elements so that it didn't have to push against the wind so the sun would warm it, the air would flow through, the energy was able to flow not just within the homes themselves but the community as a whole in a flowing, peaceful manner. And they didn't have these problems back then. But now that we don't think about that feng shui of what we're doing, we're just building blocks here, there's energy going this way, and we're stuck in the middle of all these concrete jungles. And I'm not against advancement and stuff, but there's a way. They're like, oh, we'll build our structure stronger to withstand the wind. Why don't you just work with the wind so you don't have to work harder? You know,
I get
why
you.
are you working against the elements?
So one thing I'll say, so what you just said to me, what's coming in my mind is like the irony of the world is I'm speaking to you from Vancouver Island, British Columbia. You're in Australia, and me and you could be connected over these ways. But most people don't know who their neighbors are, don't connect with their community. Church, I'm not a church religious person, but I've started volunteering through the Lions Club, which is like nothing to do with religion. We just do volunteer work in the
community-based things.
Yeah, community-based volunteer work. I run bingo on Friday nights. It's me and 100
I
old
love
ladies.
that.
I run with me and 100 old ladies, and I sell all the bingo cards, and I give them their money when they win. But the church and religion used to be a huge part of your life, whether you were an Aboriginal or whether you were a European.
Community, yeah.
Big part of connection. And they have buildings you went to once a week, everybody connected, everybody focused, manifested. Now, a lot of that religion, as far as I'm concerned, is based on controlling that mass joint consciousness of that community into a certain direction back for their own benefits, because is like what I truly think an egregore, if you believe how much you believe and put energy into it, will make it real. So if you have a whole community believing in that makes that real. That's why they're always trying to control that. But I think we are all, anyone, Perakee or Mahaka, so individually powerful. You can create your own, you can create your own damn universe. You can create your
and this applies across the board. And that's, I think, is why I feel so pulled to do what I do. So before I've only been in Reiki. I've been a master for 3 years. However, it's taken me about 7 years. I've been studying it for 7 years. So level 1, level 2, and level 3. And then you become master. And so much like martial arts, I suppose, it's not like I don't mean to discredit anyone. I don't think it is something you can learn on a weekend course. It's an ancient belief that has principles, and I think it is something, it's a spiritual thing. It needs to be adapted and applied. While you can definitely read the information through a book within a weekend, possibly, if you dedicated, that whole time to it, but as opposed to applying it to your life, much like martial arts, you could train for 2 days, but it doesn't mean you're ready to fight in the ring the next day. Does that make sense? Yeah, so with Reiki, not to discredit anyone who's not learnt that way, but it's become incredibly westernized, and it's not about gatekeeping it. It's about understanding that even as myself, like I said, I'm considered a master on paper, but I personally don't consider myself a master by any means. I'm still learning so goddamn much. And I believe even now, more than ever, I'm realizing how much more I've got to expand in the concept of what Reiki can be. Because yes, I've learned how to heal people with it and change vibration in rooms, but there's so much more potential in what we can do with that realistically. So with getting back to that energy within inside of us, and what I truly believe, that heart center within Reiki, the bottom 3 chakras are masculine in nature and the top 3 are feminine. Now, our root chakra, the red, the Muladhara, is our ancient roots. Think of it as a tree in that sense of our ancient roots. That's where we connect. It's our portal of life source. For men, that's where they give their seed. For women, that's where they receive their life force, or, you know, that sexual life force energy comes from our roots. And obviously that's where we pass our genes on from. So there's that ancient lineage that lives in that energy there. Fear is the energy that will cut it off, or the darker energy, right? Now, fear is also a deep instinct. Fear can protect us. We know when to fear a spider or a snake, to not go near it. So it's not necessary. This is that misconfusion of trying to dispel fear and be fearless, but that's when they actually oppose each other. If we're living too much in our root, then we can't connect through our crown. They oppose each other like magnets. Our sacral, which is just below our belly button, like our pubis area, that's the here and now pleasures, food, sex, the things we can, instant gratification. And that opposes our third eye, which is future gratification, long-term goals, seeing a vision, seeing a bigger picture. But we often close off our sacral to sacrifice for the bigger goal. But then in that turn, that doesn't balance the energy. If you don't enjoy the here and now, then you can't imagine a future for yourself. And this is where they get you within society and the government, and where we're saying they'll poison your food. They'll make sex about possession instead of connection. They'll shut off these pleasures here and now, so we seek more and more and more of them, and we give so much to this energy that we can't envision a future for ourselves. We don't work for our long-term goals, and it is hard as humans to keep that balance, because that's when so in here it lives guilt. If we indulge in pleasure, we feel guilty, don't we? There's always a level of guilt. We eat something we like, we feel guilty afterwards because it's not considered good. And that's where that structure, when were you taught that was good or bad? Why? Is it good or bad for you? Or is that just something you learn? Yeah, that's it. But it comes down to everything. It can be like marijuana, for instance. It's good and bad for someone. They'll tell you it says society, it says it's bad. But as we know, it can be good. It can use good. But then there's people who shouldn't smoke it because it's bad for them. So we can't just go off face value as well. Does that make sense? That's where the journey comes into us. Do we need our vibration higher, or do we need it lower?
The only things I've ever read, studies, that are like, if people start doing it really young, which you did and I did, it could bring on schizophrenic traits. If you were prone to schizophrenia and you started smoking weed when you were 12, like we all did, like everybody I know did, I have questioned that too in my life. I have had real-time manifesting. I have had extreme paranoia. I have had, and what I've come to understand, now that I've balanced myself and balanced my energy and learned to, I wouldn't say control it, to deal with it or live with it, if I would have gone to a doctor and said what I was thinking, what I was feeling, whatever, I would have been given a pill. I would have been given a pill.
I told I'm schizophrenic too, yeah.
I didn't. I'm tough. And I stuck with it, and I was like, I just knew it wasn't right. Like, I knew that the things I'm thinking and feeling and seeing are real, like in some subjective reality and stuff like that. And they were demons that I had to fight off, a lot of them.
Yeah, to balance it,
projections, my own projections of my darkness, my own insecurities. There was nothing really going on rather than my own self. And I think that is what's going on with pretty much everybody. Yes, I'm not going to deny there are people that are probably really have bad issues, but I think most, up to the 99 percentile, are just having a hard time dealing with life. And look at life; it's shitty, man. We all have to work 40 hours a week plus to get by and do this. When this life is for living, life is for experiencing, life is for having fun and loving and dancing and joy, and we are not doing that. We're barely man.
I genuinely think we're in such a heightened state because we're in an unnatural state. We're not living naturally.
If
how
you
we're
don't
naturally
feel,
meant to be. Of course we're anxious. We're not, our bodies
yeah,
aren't used to this environment. We're not used to being not out and exposed to the elements and to each other. We're not used to we're not used to it. And while we're
if
used to
you're
it in a
not,
societal, in a mental sense, our bodies aren't, it's, you know, our minds might be used to it and programmed to it. But then, like I said, there's that catch up of our bodies and our spirits, and our spirits keep pulling us back, and our bodies are actually caught in between that pull,
yeah,
realistically. And it's like, well, we go this way and that, but it's what really, really keeps showing to me through society and everything that keeps getting like is the constant cut-off that we're told. Like I'm aware that they do chemtrails and they manipulate the weather for a big reason. They manipulate our food. The scale to which all of this goes to is insane. But we have choices in this. So I'm not saying any of this to scare anyone. I hope people know that. But
just be careful of mind traps. That's all I'm saying. The only
it. You
thing
need to
I've
make
always
sure
been,
that this information applies to you, and it applies, and it is
yeah.
resensed in that base of reality. And
But
when you
one
think
thing,
about it, that's what schizophrenia, when you think about that word, and this is where etymology and words are important and how they use them, schiz and phrenia, already that puts into your mind that you're in a skitzing out, you're in a mania, you want to lash out, you want to fight, right? Why would anyone feel like that way? Because they don't feel safe, they don't feel understood, and they don't feel heard.
yes, they're not connecting. They're not connecting with people, their reality, or anything. And the only thing I'll tell, as being a long time deep diver into conspiracies, and I really love Sam Tripoli from Tinfoil Hat and other podcasts. He says the conspiracy road will lead you to spirituality. Once you start seeing all the lies in the world and over again, and the only thing that I can tell people and what gives me faith and what gives me hope is, I think a lot of these things are spells, not real, or it could be ideas put out there to try and make you feel weak or not powerful. But even if they are, even whatever conspiracies may or may not be true, I always take them with a grain of salt. The one thing I think, because I know they're coming at us hard just with reality, with TV, sports, sex, drugs, distraction, is that you and we are such fucking powerful fucking beings. They're doing everything they can to focus and hold your consciousness, your attention. That's why they call it pay attention. Pay attention. You're paying attention to this sports team, or you're doing drugs, or you're watching porn, or you're doing this, or you're doing that, or our religion. You better focus on Jehovah's Witness. This is the narrow circle window.
Don't look out here,
that the energy is going through.
Yeah,
they don't want you to be broad and ready and receptive of anything and everything, and then being able to figure out for yourself, and then create your own reality, or maybe communicate with other people who have ascended to higher realms of understanding, and maybe creating our own altogether, which is I think is happening.
This is where they've really started to I suppose COVID, in a way, I'm thankful for in many ways, because it really was that push of people either choosing to see or not. And I know that we're not quite all there yet, but more than ever, I'm seeing people. I get it. It's hard to realize that you've been lied to your whole life, but it's also it's actually a really powerful feeling to be able to see it and take it back. And this is where we do need to come together. That we're so powerful, and that's where that choice comes in. We can either choose to be scared, or we can choose to use that knowing and make a different choice. And we do that together. And the more we keep making those choices together and moving back to our hearts and understanding ourselves, we can make those choices from a place of integrity instead of programming. Television. I'm telling you what to vision. You know, it's all there. It's right there.
Has resonated with me so huge lately, because I listen to like out there podcasts, like real conspiracy theorists. Or just, I don't think they're conspiracy theorists. They just are fucking intellectual people who explore all avenues.
Yeah, it's a theorist.
And so
for me, I think by now conspiracy theory is a compliment.
Yeah, free thinker. But the thing was, the whole time, and I've only just realized recently, 2019, I was already like, when it was starting in China, like all the conspiracy people, man, these are very brilliant people, cutting edge people. They're telling you, and I was trying to wake people up and this and that and fight it the whole time. And like, don't take the shot and don't do this and don't wear a mask, doesn't work. And we got to get the fuck out of society. I'm like freaking out. Now, in retrospect, now I'm looking back and seeing, I'm like, man, it was probably one of the greatest things that ever happened because it woke people up to the pharmaceutical industrial complex that is lies, that your government lies, that your doctor, it's not that your doctor is a bad or lying person, but they've only been educated by textbooks that were funded and studies that were funded by the pharmaceutical American Medical Association. Over and over again. Waking up.
Right.
But it did. I think it woke a lot of people up. And like you said, I don't think there's lines or division or anything like that. But on the other hand, even if nobody woke up, you know what people started doing? Started thinking about life and say, hey, I never been skydiving before. And I think we almost all just died. Hey, I better spend more time with my kids.
Turning on, people, connects more one-on-one.
It made people say, what's really important in life? My family, and man, we could have all just died from pandemic this year.
I don't think there was one person in the world.
What haven't I done in life yet?
There wasn't one person in the world who didn't have an ego death through that time. Yeah, it was hard. I get it. But there was that, like you said, that rebirth of a new life, and we get to choose. We do have choices in this, and we have choices of connecting. And I think I might need to go soon, but if I could wrap this up, and I guess any message I could say, whether you believe in, Reiki for me is just a term. I'm an energetic worker, so label that however you want. But if there's anything that I've learned that I could pass on to anyone watching from the various things that we've talked about through this is find your own integrity and then lead from that place. We could go around, Jehovah's Witnesses knocked on doors telling them their truth. It got us nowhere. It got us nowhere. I'm not saying put it out in this way. If you have knowledge, find your way of communicating that. But like religion telling people what to do and how it is, and they'll find you, Brad, like I found you.
Just
like
be your authentic self.
And lead from that place.
To do with this podcast. And I find the most freedom in it. I found the most freedom in it. I found the most connection in it. And magical things seem to be happening in my life, and I just keep meeting more and more awesome people. So that's the best way. I think I'm trying to amplify what you're saying, how I feel, because I feel exactly the same. Is just be your authentic self.
Find your integrity and live from that place, and you'll keep creating more integrity and more authenticity and more of who you are, and that becomes your reality, and it makes a difference. It really does.
And that's the number one thing I want people to know too, that I've come to realize is like this for me. I've never had an art. I can't draw. Maybe I'd be good at writing. I'm pretty good at talking. I've never found an outlet for art, and I think creativity, being a co-creator with God or the universe, is the most important thing. And this has been my outlet. Stop watching TV. Stop looking at Facebook.
Turn off the news.
Stop. Use your attention. They're trying to grab your attention. Stop watching hockey, football, whatever. And start.
Be mindful of anything you consume, whether it be food.
Podcast. Draw a picture. Make your own podcast. Start creating something. Start creating love. Start creating creativity. And spread it out to the world.
Find what you love and fill your life with that, because it'll become more. Whatever you consume, whether it be food, what we listen to, what we watch, what we see, all of our senses are so important. Like you said, stop watching the news. Stop watching anything that's meant to make you feel full and not powerful. Things like celebrating the new year. If you look at it astrologically and energetically, the new year is physically based. How many people make a New Year's resolution and then feel like shit by February? So many people. You know why? Because energetically, that is not the time anyone should be making plans or goals. It's actually
spring.
It's probably it's the worst time for us. We're moving into it's just set up. The Gregorian calendar. I mean, like all of those structures are all purposely built to make you not feel powerful. If there's any time to make, it's go off things of nature, based off nature. If you can align yourself more with nature, you'll find your natural self.
100%.
And
Stephanie, I think I think we've knocked this out of the park. I think we're gonna have to have a part 2 and a part 3 and a part 4. Two ADD kids like us are never gonna stop talking. We've gone well over. Shit, we've gone 2.5 hours. This is my longest podcast ever. But you said
I told you. I said to you, it's gonna be hard to shut me up.
You warned me. But you get two crackhead minded people together, crazy people,
and we will change the world. I'm telling you, Brad, we will.
But I'm gonna end the recording. Stay on the line. I want to talk to you. Thank you, everybody, for coming. I hope this has bettered your world or enlightened you in some way. It definitely has me connecting with Stephanie.
And me too, guys.
Yeah, she's a crazy person just like me, and it was a wonderful jive of personalities. And thank you very much, Stephany. Oh, is there anything you want to say? Is there do you have a website or anything like that for your Reiki?
Honestly, as far as my business goes, I come and go at the moment. I'm in a bit of a standstill. But if you ever want to chat to me about anything that I've talked about, I'll comment on this channel. Okay. So you can find me directly. But I'm on Facebook. If you type in Stephany Pippi, you'll find me. I promise you, you'll find me somewhere. I have faith with women to connect. You'll be able to find me.
Peace and love, everybody. Keep it real. Live your most authentic life, please. That's the message from, I think, me and Stephany came up with today. One love, everybody.
Thank you.